Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. I am joined today by the rising Scream King, who is a Renaissance man with writing, directing, producing, and starring in a number of horror films. You've seen him in Scare Me, where his directorial biggest, Werewolves Within, and most recently in Wounded Fawn. If you've watched it, it came out last week as of right now. Just an incredible performance. So I am joined by Josh Ruben. How are you?
I'm very well, man. How are you?
I'm great. I was just telling you how excited I am to have you here. I've been a fan of yours for quite some time, but you coming over into the horror world was like, oh, this is the perfect transition for someone whose work I love. So
I'm just trying to follow in the footsteps of Krasinski, Kreger, and Peele. You know what I mean? All these comedy dudes. I got to keep up with them.
Yeah. Well, you listen, you've cornered the market on Shudder.
That's true. I just hope people watch them all.
Yeah. You're the king over there. So I don't know how much you know about me or the show, but I am a hard-hitting journalist. So I do start out all of our interviews with something pretty tough. So I hope you're ready.
Uh-oh. What's
your favorite sandwich?
Oh, dude, this is too tough. Well, my standby for a long time. I'll walk you through it historically. First, you start with PB&J, then you graduate to a tuna salad sandwich when you're a little bit older. But then it was the turkey BLT with mustard. No mayo. I don't deal with mayo. Went right to mustard. Mayo just never rubbed me the right way. So turkey BLT with mustard, so long as I have that like side of fries when I'm like on my sandwich route. I don't know if it's kind of base or not, but
no one's taking me on a journey like that. Yeah, it's interesting to hear your evolution.
And at one point it was a chicken cutlet, on a Sammy with some tomatoes and pickled onions. It's fine. Also mustard, but I keep coming back to that turkey BLT with mustard.
Interesting. No mayo though.
I know.
Not a mayo guy.
No mayo. I not really a mayo guy unless you like mix it with sriracha, a little bit of lime, and you create yourself a little spicy mayo situation. Dip some hand rolls in it, or put it on the sandy if you want. Let's get crazy.
I like that. Sandy is a good one too. I like that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I assume you've gotten the question a lot about what your favorite horror films are, what your origins are, but I'm actually more interested in what horror scenes have stuck with you since you've seen them. Like, which ones are always in your mind?
Oh my God. That's a great question. Starting with the most trodden, the two that are always in my mind are probably Tina's body bag in the hallway in Nightmare on Elm Street. That's one that we've seen a kind of resurgence of an homage through many different movies and iterations, and whether it's just the school or just a haunting image of someone standing down the hallway, or David Robert Mitchell's It Follows, I feel like touched on that just a pinch. Even Kevin Phillips in Super Dark Times, I feel like, and certainly in Yellow Jackets, if people are familiar with season one of it, there's been kind of touches that one definitely. But I don't know. There are many. I mean, on the spectrum of horror and what horror is, I think pretty much the entire sequence of Zach Galligan's mother killing or defending herself in the kitchen on Christmas from the Gremlins, shoving that one in particular in the blender, that like goopy mess that the Gremlin was reduced to really kicked my ass, like really stuck with me. And I think maybe last in that spectrum is really the mosquito impalement in Popcorn. If you're familiar with that ridiculous '80s slasher, one of my favorites, that just kind of stuck in my mind. There's a moment when I believe it was the end. Not to spoil anything, but how a certain character was killed. They sent this basically this toy bug flying through the air as part of the interactive theater experience. The whole movie takes place in a movie theater. This character's impaled, and I was just like, now that's a way to go.
That's fucking incredible. That's like, what was Oh, there was a film, The Tingler, where like the one seat in the theater would like shake because of like some bug that was on you, but it went through someone's chest.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. And this one, it
Interesting.
was the mosquito beak through the heart.
Damn. It's funny you mentioned Gremlins. There's a scene in Gremlins that has stuck with me for completely different reasons. When they first get the other Gremlins, there's the kind of little chubby one. At some point, they're all like hanging out, and he spits on Gizmo. And honest to God, I
Yeah.
laugh for 20 minutes every time I see it. I don't know why, but I think it's someone had to build that little doll and then make it spit, which is just
Yeah. Yeah.
hilarious.
And Joe Dante will still talk about like, well, the whole the rub of that whole shoot was you have to wait for everything to work and work at the same time. And we really set ourselves up for disaster on part two. But yes, that's exactly right. It's just it is funny. There's something just too an animatronic basically reacting in that kind of delayed, janky way to being spit on is absolutely hysterical.
I also get to watch a child find out the Santa Claus myth while watching that in the theater. So that was traumatizing. But
I apologize.
let's talk about you. Your background was heavily in comedy for a long time with College Humor and everything you did, but oh dear. You've essentially, as we said, taken over Shudder in the past few years with your horror. Was horror something that's always interested you, or did you come to it later in life?
Always. My sister introduced me to like Freddy's Nightmares, the TV series when I was a kid,
Wow.
along with like, whatever Friday the 13th movie was playing on cable. Those were probably my very first glimpses of horror and experiences of horror when I was, oh gosh, 7 or 8 years old, maybe even younger, in Potomac, Maryland, probably in my sister's room. She had
Oh.
the TV in the room. And that made me a horror fan before I was a comedy fan, really. I discovered the genre beforehand. There was something about that era, too, that was inherently funny and buoyant. Not so much the poltergeist of the world, but,
Mhm.
the Dream Master and the Stephen King's Cat's Eye, and even like Misery had a wink to it. There's just like a almost like cartoonish, farcical kind of a vibe. So there was an inherent comedy in there. And then like by the time Tales from the Crypt came out, when I was a little bit older, whatever, 10, 11, that just blew my brains out because it was just so inherently funny, so gory, and with such a wonderful wink. I think that was when I realized, like, holy shit, I think this is everything I want to do.
God, that's no one has said that. Like I've interviewed a bunch of horror people, but I've always waited for someone to bring up Freddy's Nightmares because like I feel like more horror franchises should bring that back. That was a great era.
It really, really was, and such an incredible pilot. Like, it's Freddy on
Yeah, the
trial, and he's
trial.
not, dude, and he's like, Toby Hooper directed it, and he's not in makeup, and it feels like this kind of epic. And just because of the kind of the limitations of the budget, it so much relies on performance and off key kind of, not off key, minor key
Yeah,
based sort of unsettling music. There's just something about it, and I think Screambox released just about all of them, and maybe
I was.
they've now migrated to Tubi, but I think you can watch like all whatever 100 of them.
Oh shit! All right, cool. Guess you
Yeah.
gave me a weekend plan.
Yes, dude.
I didn't know you were from Maryland either. I'm from the Eastern Shore. That's wild.
All right. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
all hail brown paper bag crabs forever.
Yeah, I don't eat seafood, but I lived in the Chesapeake Bay, you'd feel like maybe I would be into it, but
Hmm.
crabs are probably the most horrifying thing on earth because they're born with scissors for hands. Nothing
Yeah.
has good intent with that.
Well, Edward did.
Yeah, it didn't really work out for him though. Oh
It
no,
was
it did.
fine. He just lived. He
Yeah,
lived
he had a
alone.
happy
Just made
ending.
sculptures. Yeah, he got
Yeah,
that kiss, and that was it.
yeah, good for him. So I know you mentioned a couple times the kind of chemistry between horror and comedy, and you're a writer. What similarities have you found in your process when you're working on the two genres or the marriage set of?
Well, you never want to get caught trying to be funny, whether in horror or comedy, and you got to have immense control over your instrument. So someone was asking me about this the other day. Well, Josh, you seem to have this control over stillness, or stillness seems to be kind of the big part of the stuff that you do, living in stillness, require this, that, and the other thing. And I think that stillness is a super powerful thing in comedy and in horror, whether playing a villain or whether you're playing a dope stuck in a mountain lodge in a snowstorm, whatever it is. From stillness, we're kind of ready for anything. So I feel like whether Fred and Scare Me is super still and then suddenly starts screaming "run" to Fanny and breaking out into this kind of unexpected chase, or whether someone is super still right before they say a one-liner in a comedic scenario. That's the through line that I think is such a valuable default, perhaps, place to exist from, start from, because it draws you in. I made the comparison the other day to stage plays are the same way. It's like when you're watching someone in a theatrical scenario, an actor takes a long pause, the whole audience will often lean in if they're being manipulated correctly, and the audience is kind of in the palm of your hand. And then at that point, you're ready for some big jarring scare cue, like in the show 222, A Ghost Story, which is really awesome, playing in Los Angeles. They did stuff like that. Or you're waiting for the audience is waiting kind of in the palm of your hand, nice big pregnant pause, and then one-liner, and everybody starts cackling. So I feel like that's at least is a device that I've carried kind of straight through. But otherwise, there's a lot of disparities. The comedy horror. I think comparisons are, people have answered that probably far more educational means than I have.
But so you are like, the timing of everything really counts. Do you think your background in comedy has made that your strength in your horror?
Immensely. I don't know what it is about what's inherent in my bones about knowing. I don't even think I'm no jump scare master by any means, but I'm sure that probably watching so much horror from a young age and kind of I really responded to atmospheric horror and Carpenter-esque kind of horror that later, I don't know, Brian Bertino might have adopted for The Stranger, stuff like that. It's like there's no jump scare, but it's like if you're looking at an anamorphic image and you see someone kind of emerge from the darkness in the background, that's just as terrifying to me, if not more terrifying, than crafting some perfect jump scare. But maybe I'm saying that as a cop out. But I'm losing the thread. Oh yeah, I mean, but I think as a comedian, you have this kind of an inherent timing. I'm sure there's something subconscious that sort of developed in watching all those creepy films, and then also doing comedy. You look at it as a visual medium, I guess, to speak to the tableau of it all. Something emerging from the shadows is also, if you look at Naked Gun, someone in the background, walking into a wall, or opening a door and out comes a flood of chickens flocking around, or whatever the visual joke is. It's there's an interesting kind of parallel I think I responded to as a kid, watching equal stuff, equal movies in both genres, and I'm sure it's inherent in what mild superpower I have, being a comedian in horror, but I don't know if I can quite place it beyond just watching too much shit.
I mean, that's always a good way to get better at things.
Yeah.
So with both Scare Me and Werewolves Within, all of your characters, I just rewatched both of them prepping for this. Every character is so memorable. Like, they have such big personalities, but they never kind of overcome one another. How do you go about creating your characters to fill your kind of sphere, even if Scare Me was a little bit smaller?
That's a good question. You got to leave it up to casting to a degree. Mishna Wolf, with Werewolves, her kind of North Star was Clue, because each of those characters, as Mishna would put it, are a color, to a degree. It's like Professor Plum kind of has that whatever Plum-like demeanor, mustard kind of, it's just like you I don't know, there's something that just feels appropriate. Spicy mustard, spicy attitude, and also, yellow. It's interesting to kind of look at it, the kind of scope of that palette. So casting is a piece, but the writing to that degree took it such a so far down the field, and then you hire someone like Sam Richardson, where opposed to if I'd gone another way and hired like Jack Quaid, your actor is informing the character and informing the sphere. Just as it would have been different if I hired William Jackson Harper or if I'd hired Wyatt Russell, it would change even a few degrees to the left or right in terms of tone. So the character's development is what's massive in character development is casting's a huge part of that process. So you have to be able to leave it up to them, and the writing's just got to be good. I mean, with Fred and Fanny, like with Scare Me, despite that being kind of smaller, I just knew that Carlo was just a different energy than Fred, who was butthurt and emasculated, and was a type of person who I'd worked with quite a bit and had a lot of experience with, the emasculated male, who's over competitive and super butthurt quite easily and insecure, and will be one to make below the belt comments. You meet a lot of those types of people, especially in entertainment, and that's also a piece of who I was too, or who I can be when I dip into my sour moods. Just as Fanny, who can wear their sort of accomplishments on their sleeve in kind of what could be kind of a grating or frustrating way, but in also kind of a charming way. But while the writing only took those characters so far, or took it within the sphere, it was Aya who brought something completely different to that role. That a Tatiana Maslany would have brought something different, or Natasha Rothwell would have brought something even different than that. Your actors inform it so much, and so I think the valuable thing overall is just that there's an engine, a motive, and a vibe that then the actors can take and run with. So the casting is so integral. And with anything that I'm writing, certainly in the future, my first question for any actor is going to be, here it is. What do you think? What would you change? What would feel best coming out of your mouth? Like, I don't ever want to work anything where I have to pounce on an actor for, fucking up their ums and uhs or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you're like in tune with like, hey, if you don't like this, like, let's work on it.
Yeah, you gotta be.
Yeah, yeah. Some directors don't sound like they are, but I love the
idea
of getting feedback from people who are actually doing the thing.
Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful? Yeah,
just being a human being. So I am admittedly a huge fan of Scare Me. It's just a lot of very sharp writing in what feels, and it's mostly a contained bottle story in the cabin. And the whole place pretty much takes place in this cabin with the power outage. And something I wanted to ask you about was, how hard was it to make it look like the fireplace was the only source in the room, the source of light in the room?
Well, I have on the rare occasion I post on my my subscription what do you call it, not format but
Patreon
tab. Yeah, it's sort of they have this function on Instagram where you can like post exclusive comment. I charge like 99 cents because I'm like, this is ridiculous to charge anything. But my wife was like, you should just see if any of your followers should go for it. And some suckers fell for it. But someday I will post our gaffer Albie on Scare Me. He created this, truly built this apparatus, this firelight apparatus with these sort of rotating, flickering lights. They'd rotate and flicker in this kind of disparate pattern. And that was our source. So the most terrifying thing on our low budget and frustrating thing and challenge was to black out the entire cabin and curtains so that we didn't have to do 14 days of overnights. We'd walk in at 8 a.m. We'd shoot till, whatever, dinner time, and in total darkness, because we had 4 crew guys essentially vault the entire place in these curtains so that it appeared it was at night, but we're like, no, let's go to work from 9 to 5. And when we walk in, we can just flick on the firelight. But it was the magic of this fireplace apparatus that Albie created. And then each time, depending on what coverage we were on, we would rotate this thing around, wrap around the lighting source with minimal tweaks to light the actors. And that was wonderful because, there was only so much work you really needed to do to light the place, and you could get going kind of very quickly in the morning. What got tricky was, when you're shooting outside and negative 10, 12 degree weather, or with the wind chill being what it was. Or actually having to shoot at the fireplace. We only had so many days that our pyro guy could be there, and you can't just make a fire. You needed a flame bar. So that was, frustrating, but you kind of Tetrised it out to make it work. But truly it was the magic of this guy, Albie. I got to find the video and I'll put it up soon.
That's incredible. I was so interested in things like that. And so how do you feel as the director? How did you feel the fire enhanced the feeling of your film?
Oh, immensely. I mean, you do tests, you do sort of these camera tests, and you get a sense of it, but you never really see the entire thing, especially on an indie film. You never get a sense of what it really is until you get there, until you're there and all the lights are off and the firelight is on. You realize how much more tweaking you need to do, or what the camera's not picking up, this, that, and the other thing. But it was just so effective. And so what I love hearing, especially as someone who is a fan of the whatever rewatchable comfort movie, who wouldn't want to have a movie or make a movie that's rewatchable, or people could say, oh my God, I watched this 5 or 6 times. It feels cozy. And I think there are people that see Scare Me now as a rewatchable film that they can get some pizza and a beer and like watch and feel like a warm winter kind of comfort flick, which is just the most massive, most immense compliment I could possibly get. And I think part of that rewatchability is that people can turn it on. They might feel this way about Werewolves to a sort of a similar degree. Is it feels as warm as the cabin is. Where on the flip side, you can watch White Lotus and people go like, man, it feels like you're on vacation. You're living vicariously. It feels nice. It looks nice. And so there's probably something similar. We live vicariously through certain characters in exotic places or in cozy places when we need a little comfort and kind of, those endorphins run if the thing's done right.
Now that you say it, that makes perfect sense. Like, I watched it. Our Christmas stuff is up. It's freezing. I'm like, wow, that does feel comforting. I did Fawn, which was a rough opening because you're a little bit wild in that one. This Werewolves, and then I rewatched all of Precious Plum, and then I rewatched it all.
That's how you prep for an interview. It's like, who is this dude?
I know a wolf from a weird dog, but now the two leads of Scare Me, when we meet them for the first time, they're walking. It's such an interesting shot because as we meet them, they kind of turn and the camera is behind them. Was there any particular reason you did that?
Well, with that shot in particular, I was trying to find a way where we could shoot that sequence and for it to feel like Steadicam. And I was just like, let's just make a commitment to covering this scene from the back, walking up the hill and timing it out so that we get to their respective cabins, quote unquote. It was really just a swing. You only have so much time, and that day by the lake was so bitter cold. And what I think was our first day of shooting, we thought, oh, let's start the movie with when these two meet. It was just a swing. And I'll tell you, in the edit, I was kicking myself. I was like, why the fuck did I cover it this way? And truly, it was like I couldn't quite figure out how to cover that much talking without it being, or with it being interesting. And so I just said, why don't we just follow them and see if we catch a little light? And then, in the edit, when I'm kicking myself, going, this is way too long, you look at my back and I hate the way that, my voice sounds, whatever it is, you're kicking yourself. It's one of my least favorite scenes probably. And I was looking for ways to kind of nix it. Yeah.
Huh.
Just because it was all because of my performance, not even what it was visually. I was like, oh God, I call bullshit on my acting, but that's a whole other thing. I literally saw Wounded Fawn for the first time in Tribeca and turned to my wife and I'm like, am I dog shit? Is this terrible? And she was like, no, you're fucking crazy. Like, relax. That's just welcome to the insecurities of being a performer who
Yeah.
also directs. It's a total fucking curse. But anyway, I was looking for a way to get around that. And Patrick Lawrence, my brilliant editor, pitched a jump cut, and that helped a lot. And so I'm so glad you bring that up, and that I assume probably dig it to a degree. If you do great, I think it works. It survives because Patrick was just like, "Fuck it, let's just try jump cutting." And I was like,
That's
"Okay, yes, anything."
It's so interesting because I personally felt like it was a very intimate way to go at it because like it feels like you're walking with them, like you're investing yourselves in these two characters who you're literally going to spend the next
Sure.
hour or so stuck in a cabin with. So
Yeah.
I was very interested in the way you shot it. So that's so interesting that
Thank you.
you're your hardest critic. I
Oh,
guess
hell
everyone
yeah.
is. So Wounded Fawn. I don't want to get into it too much because it did just come out. It is available to stream now on Shudder. If you don't have Shudder, what the fuck's wrong with you? It's an unsettling motion picture. I'll be honest with you. It's like if you followed the killer home after a slasher or a serial killer type thing, and I feel like it's a lot of kind of how we look at violence and how people kind of commodify it, but with you being the unsettling lead, how do you approach a role like that? Is it something that your comedy timing and things like that have allowed you to kind of get more into these characters where you can be unsettling?
I am so glad that you, especially with your knowledge of what my history with College Humor and with sketch in general, are asking me this question because you'll understand this conceptually, and I'm interested what you'll sort of make of this. Is that so? I'm best known for comedy. Comedy is the easiest kind of thing that I can roll out of bed and sort of do. While I also grew up loving everything Sam Raimi and even far darker than that, the Elm Streets and Friday the 13th and horror shit of the world. Um, the only acting challenge to it, after somebody who's played goblins and Precious Plum's mama and ridiculous Hicks and all kinds of insane characters through my career, which are oddly far more easy for me to play, the challenge was, as excited as I was to like play the baddie and have my quote unquote Bruce Campbell, Patrick Bateman moment, was this is the guy who is technically seductive. He is supposed to be, the character archetype is a good looking, seductive man. And I'm someone who's, quite, when I was a younger kid, quite, I don't know, you could say sort of effeminate and completely odd and not quite even interested in girls, or if I was interested in girls, around the time I was started to get interested in girls, I couldn't quite even begin to figure out how to flirt. Never made a move. Never was really comfortable, even flirting, seducing, being the first to kiss, whatever. And here's this guy who's so confident that he's handsome and that he has all, the nice car and the house, and he's a seducer. And so the acting challenge was, as someone who's done comedy and been so far more comfortable playing, for lack of a better word, like kind of uglier, odder characters. Not that Bruce isn't odd, is odd for other reasons. The challenge was, how do I play sexy? Which is something that as a comedian you just don't do, or as my kind of character actor career, I don't do. So that was really hard. I don't want to say it was hard. It was more like kind of thrilling because it was such a challenge. No one asked me to do it. And this is a guy who's wearing a mask, so behind that mask, he's exuding this sort of seductiveness and whatnot. But beyond that is like this kind of tortured, fucked up, super weirdo. Yeah. Which is what a lot of dudes are, and what unfortunately a lot of our women, the family, has to encounter when they open up, Tinder.
Yeah.
So that part of it was thrilling, but the challenge was indeed playing someone who is so not, how I see myself.
That's so interesting because like I not before having spoken to you, meeting you, whatever, I would not have got like there was a confidence to your performance in this that you exude in the character that I wasn't. And I've followed your career since college. Like I've been watching you forever. As I told you before this, like I'm a huge fan. I I've loved all of your horror stuff so far, but this felt like your Bruce. Yeah, this is your Bruce Campbell moment. Like this is like, holy fuck, Ruben's not playing around. Like
Yeah.
there's a scene where you're standing at the sink and your hand is shaking, and I was like, this is so fucking unsettling because you don't know what's going on behind his eyes. Like
Yeah.
this man's fucked. Like he's a bad dude.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But you know what? Like, someone the other day, they said, yeah, it was kind of like your Robin Williams moment. I was like, now that is exciting because what
oh
blew my
yeah,
mind was when Robin Williams got into horror, or at least got into
oh my
psychological
god,
horror,
1 hour
psychological thrillers.
photo.
Dude,
Holy
dude.
shit.
One and Insomnia, and even I haven't seen Death to Smoochie in 100 years. I don't think that was the same
Fantastic film.
level, but yeah. But it was like when he was as a guy who grew up, or I grew up, kind of watching do comedy and over listening to Live at the Met or his comedy albums, whatever. Someone who for that kind of comedy to be so bitingly
Damn.
funny, and then to see him be a fucking stalker, or then to see him, beat the shit out of Al Pacino and shoot at him with a shotgun, and I mean that stuff was really, really exciting to me because you go, wow, now that is talent. That is the spectrum. And so when she mentioned that the other day, I was like, that's exciting to me because I don't want people to pin me down. So in the context of
Yeah.
my career, I love that people can go like, oh shit, this guy does Dropout. He does silly voices. Wait a minute, he directed a werewolf movie. Like, whoa, he played like a borderline incel, emasculated piece of shit, and he also wrote this thing that went to Sundance. And he's playing this serial killer with this Anton Chigurh moment, jerking off in a sink and killing women with a bog knock. Like, what's going on? I
Yeah.
love
Oh
that.
shit. I That is such an apt description of what this is. That would have never come to mind before me because I was a child when I saw 1 hour photo after seeing this man as the fucking genie. So like I was a kid
Mm-hmm.
who had access to Cinemax and Showtime far too early in my life, which is why I
Same.
love Friday the 13th and why I love Freddy, like all those
Yes.
things. Like I got them because I stayed up too late. My parents were young and dumb. But like going from all the other kids being like, yeah, he was great as like Bicentennial Man, and me being like, yeah, he scares the shit out of me because he kills people.
Yeah.
Damn,
Yes.
that is
Yes.
such a. I'm very like. I'm not trying to kiss your boots here, but I'm very excited to see where your career keeps going because like you got the chops of like both sides, and I'm a huge horror and comedy person, so I want to see where's next. Now,
Thank you, man. Me too. Yeah. Me too.
I hope you're excited for your own career. I know you're beating yourself up, but
We'll see. We'll see.
you've done some good shit. Now I did notice that you are doing a graphic novel, and that is
That's
very
correct.
exciting to me because we got our start in comics and we're still very big in that space. So,
Mhm.
what is Darla?
So, Darla is, I should say, a tonal homage to my love for Tales from the Crypt. You could think of it like a
Oh, yeah.
page out of a Tales from the Crypt universe, or a Stephen King Derry sort of a universe. It's essentially about an irritable small town woman who, after a factory accident, starts isolating herself, or feeling quite isolated, lonelier and lonelier from her sort of from what life she even had, and she starts fantasizing this creature in her house that sort of urges her to do like wicked things. And so there's an element of the dead zone, because you have this woman also sort of fantasizing and obsessing over this shithead politician. But there's also this element of the Babadook, where there's this thing she's sort of, that she's seeing in her house, and she thinks it might be somehow related to the ghost of her dog that she lost and she killed by accident. There's the story. There's another sort of storyline of her trying to reconnect with her estranged daughter, who she was a terrible mother to. And so it's so different. And I still feel like, because it's in such a kind of early stage, I mean, the full version is kind of ready. And with our partners at Invader Comics, we are publishing it in 2023.
Oh, wait, you're doing it through Invader?
Through Invader with Mike Perkins.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know Mike. Holy shit.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So Mike has been an incredible partner, and Kevin Miller, his partner, been an incredible partner. I've known Kevin for years, and Mike. So yeah, it's an Invader exclusive with Brianna Tippett, who is an artist who I discovered on Instagram and have since been just blowing up her shit. I just think she's absolutely genius. You should totally follow her. Tippett, two P's, two T's, Bree Tippett. So if you look up Bree Tippett, you'll see. I mean, she can draw anything, but she has such a style that feels sort of who's the fella who did Black Hole? She has kind of a Burns-like style, a Charles Burns-esque sort of a vibe, but it's more craggy and yet also similarly kind of innocent. And it's quite hard to place, and she can stretch even beyond that, but that kind of is her default look. And I was like, this could be really fucking interesting for this kind of story I've had percolating for some time. And
Holy
she super responded to it. Yeah.
I pulled up her first thing is Pearl, who's my current slasher obsession. Oh, look, there's you.
Yeah, totally.
Holy
she
shit.
did some Wounded Fawn
Her
shit.
style rules.
Isn't it amazing? She's gonna explode. She's just an artist living in Nevada who's kind of like her. Just all she wants to do is draw. I mean, and she drew this comic. This is a graphic novel. It's over 150 pages.
Mm-hmm.
She drew it in, 3 months, something like that. And then I gave her a bunch of revisions. She turned the revisions around in 2 weeks. I'm like, this kid is fast, and she's so good. And so
is she doing the colors as well?
She's doing everything. So Invader did kind of an alt cover, but she is super involved. We had a feature in the Halloween Ends Fango that came out just a bit ago that also featured blood relatives and Wounded Fawn. So I had like three Josh Ruben stories in the last Fango. So I think Brian Fuller called me a Fango slut, which is a huge honor.
Yeah, that's kind of a good thing to be.
It really is. I'm on cloud nine. So anyway, what I was going to say was, it's so hard to tell what the outside world is going to make of this thing. I need to send it to someone to kind of get a sense of, does this feel more Nick Dornazzo's Beverly, or does it feel kind of Black Hole-esque? Does it work? Does it not work? Is it offensive? Is it effective? Is it heartfelt? Is it spooky? I'm very, very curious how people are going to respond to it. So, yeah, man, I'm quite eager to get that out next year and see how folks feel about it.
I'm so excited to read this. Pretty much all I write for Fangoria is their comics coverage. So, like, I'm gonna reach out to you to do an interview over there. But like,
oh my gosh, please, yeah.
God damn, I'm so excited to see what you're gonna do with graphic novels. Were you a comics fan, or like, are you
massive?
Right.
Massive. I mean, I remember going to the comic book store and begging my dad to, buy me whatever 2 or 3 at a time back in the early 90s. And, you're used to growing up with like Batman, the animated series, or even the Adam West Batman. And then you go to the comic book store and you'd see a Riddler variant where he's covered in blood, and you're like, holy shit, what is this world where they're taking these characters that I'm used to in one sort of platform or one medium, and it's darker. You see the Ninja Turtles and it's darker. It's
way
graphic.
Darker.
How incredible. What an incredible medium. And so, I got my hands on as many as I could. I was never a kind of collector really by volume, other than like Wolverine versus Punisher. Like I had to get one through 3 or whatever. Okay. But man,
are you reading anything currently? Do you still read?
Yes, I'm reading Batman Reptilian, right now.
Ennis, nice.
Yeah, which is rad. I read We Have Demons, which I really enjoy. I didn't get part 2 and 3 or anything after one, but I really enjoyed one. Um, and I know there's an awesome new Predator with a
Yes.
female protagonist, and she's like all like
With the
space suited up.
armor and shit. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I
Rules.
only read the first one, and it's fucking rad. And then, oh gosh, and I bought just a massive Godzilla volume, like a gigantic collection of Godzilla stories.
Have you read Godzilla Goes to Hell?
It is actually breathtaking.
Okay, it feels like something like you need to check out. We'll talk afterwards. I have a couple of recs you might really like that are horror based.
Oh my gosh, please. Yeah. I mean, I just, was excited as hell to get my hands on Ash and Darkman versus the Evil Dead. So, or Army of the Dead or whatever. And that was just fun as hell to just see my homie Darkman in that scenario.
Seems like you're a big Darkman fan from what I've gathered.
Huge.
So, as we talked about, you've done your 12th interview in the past couple of weeks. Now, you've done a ton. Is there anything that you wish you got to talk about more in these interviews?
Nothing I wish I could talk about more. I mean, what's exciting about every single interview is everyone, I think, is aware of the fact that I'm on this kind of indie press tour, and they're asking me very, very specific questions. Like, I can tell you there is no one who asked me about the specific lighting, say, apparatus or processes scare me, number one. Or number two, I have gone on such a deep dive on the comic book of it all. That's super exciting. And also, I mean, it's so early to be talking about Darla anyway, but just to be going off on comic books, it's been rad. There's some incredible shows and hosts and just interviewers out there. So
and I'm excited that you're doing all these. Cause we've gotten to a point where we've got some really big guests who've come on recently, like seeing you do these other shows who like may not be as big. Like I love seeing that because it gives people a chance to like have cool ass people on the show. So I'm glad you're doing this for people like us.
Me too, man. And you know what? I'm excited to have my like barbarian moment. I know I saw Zach Kreger was on some really kind of smaller shows, and I thought that was so fucking rad. It's like you're one of the top directors right now, and you're going to go on these kind of smaller shows to just like talk it out. That's what I want to do. I want to have my smile moment and just go back on either all these and more.
As a kid who was whitest kid in College Humor, it's a really good time for me to be a horror person.
Dude.
When I found out that was Zach, I like lost my shit. Cause I've done this fun thing because I write so much about movies and I see all these movies now. It's like, I don't want to watch trailers for things I actually want to look at. And then right as I'm getting in the theater, I'm like, oh, who directed this? And then I looked him up and I sat in my seat and I went, oh my fucking God.
I know, dude. I know.
I love seeing the move over from comedy and horror and the kind of through line.
Me too. How incredible. Like truly, how rad.
But thank you so much for being here. Where can people find your films other than Shudder?
Well, Werewolves is on VOD in about 6 months' time, depending on what folks are listening to this. I'd say March, April, May, May, June. Start keeping an eye out on VOD for Blood Relatives and Wounded Fawn. And it'll be around that time, I guess, that the graphic novel will be ready to tout. Werewolves is on VOD. I think it's streaming on Showtime right now. That's where I watched it. Oh, rad! Yeah. So hopefully folks keep watching. I think we actually opened in South Korea Werewolves recently. I have someone from Busan who wrote to me and was like, "Hey, this movie played really well in Busan." I'm like, fuck yeah.
Hell yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Great place for horror. There's a train there, I've heard.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much for being here. We're very excited for people to check these things out.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.